What are the commonalities among leaders who sustain excellence over an extended period of time?
All right, Pat. It's so good to see you, man, and talk to you. And welcome back on the Learning Leader Show for like the fourth or fifth time. I don't even know. It's just good to see you, man.
I love it. And boy, we didn't record it, but we just spent 45 minutes or so talking about everything under the sun. It's just, I love talking to you too. It's a blast.
Yeah, we should have recorded that. Okay, the reason though that I thought now is a pertinent time for us to talk is because in my conversations with you and your team, I'm not sure I've ever heard you this excited about a concept. And this is coming from the guy who wrote The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team and the ideal team player, like Joe Burrow, as we were talking about off air. All these incredible, The Motive, right? I love that little book. All of these incredible concepts that you've written about and created, yet this newest one on the 6 types of working genius, I sense more excitement in your voice than I've ever heard before, man. So that's why I really wanted to talk to you about this.
Yeah, in fact, we're releasing the model that it's based on and this tool before the book. I'm in the midst of, I've just started writing the book and we're hopefully going to have it at the beginning of the year. But we are so excited about this model. It's changed my company. It's changed my marriage.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. And it's based on 20 years of moderate frustration at work and why am I frustrated? And one day, just 3 months ago, we figured it out and everything is different. So I'm very excited.
So let's dig into the concept and I'll kind of lay the framework here, Pat. So I've taken the assessment. You obviously understand it and have done it. I'd love for you to explain and share the concept at a high level, and then we can get more personal and share my results and how I can best lean into this, as well as your results and how you actually implemented this within your company, because doing that will help others who are listening and watching implement it within their company. So the 6 types of working genius. Can you give us an overview of what this is?
So there's 2 ways to look at this. One is these 6 things are the 6 activities that are required to get anything done. Like any project, even in your family, you got to do these things to run a family, to run a business, to get a project done. Anything that has to be done requires 6 different activities. And as it turns out, every one of us has 2 of them that we're awesome at, that we love doing, God-given natural ability that gives us energy and joy, and that we have natural talent in. And when we get to do those every day, we're really excited and we're productive and we're motivated. It's a great flywheel effect. Like, man, I love doing this. I want to do more and I do it better. And so I want to do it more. But there's 2 of the 6 that, and we call that your area of working genius. Mm-hmm. You're a working genius when you're doing those things. And in fact, we guessed yours based on knowing you over the years. Cody guessed your type. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But there are 2 of these 6 things we call your area of working frustration. They're the other end of the scale where you're like, oh, please don't make me do that. And though every one of us has to do stuff we don't like to do sometimes, if you're in a position where you have to do that too much at work or in your work, even at home or in your personal life, it's going to drain you of your energy. You're going to get really frustrated and it can make you miserable. And there's people that go to work and they're like, I hate my job, but I don't know why. And it's like, probably because you're working in your area of working frustration. Now, that's 2 and 2, that's 4. Then there's these 2 in the middle we call your area of working competency. And your areas of working competency are things you can do pretty well. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily give you energy and joy, but you're like, I don't mind it. I can do it for a while. I'm pretty good at it. Now, if you're doing that in your job, that's great. But if you're not doing anything in your area of working genius, you start to wilt a little bit. So, and boy, I'm so excited that you have listeners out there that are going to hear this and take this assessment and have mind-blowing self-discovery in a very simple, fast, and practical way. Because that's how this came about. I was sitting here, Amy, who works with me, she and I have worked together for 25 years. She and I were doing a conference call or a Zoom call with an organization. And then I did a follow-up with them, and I had to give them some tough feedback. And then I came up with another idea right after that. And Amy said, "Why do you do what you do?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I wish I knew, because half of it frustrates me, half of it I love, and I don't know why." And that day, in the next 4 hours, she and I and 2 other colleagues sat in our office in the middle of COVID, by the way. It was just the 4 of us in there with a whiteboard. And we came up with this theory, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is huge. Get this. I went home that night and had a Zoom call and was talking to one of our best consultants. And I put it on the whiteboard. I said, "Hey, we just came up with this model today." And he was like, "That's really interesting." The next day, he went and met with the CEO of a company. And the next morning, so less than 24 hours after we came up with this, and the CEO was frustrated, and he drew the model on the board and said, "What about this?" The guy started crying.
Really?
He said, and this is the CEO of a big company. He said, "Oh my gosh, that's why. That's what's going on. Oh my gosh, this explains everything." And so the face validity of this, every time we show it to somebody, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's what I love. Oh gosh, every time they make me do that at work, I wilt." And so here we are. I'm excited about this because I've seen how it affects people's lives and how it allows people to tap into their God-given natural gifts, which we're meant to do.
Can you share the 6 types?
Sure.
Okay.
The first one is a mysterious one. It's really powerful. My wife has it. And it's not one of my working geniuses. And it's called the gift, the genius of wonder. And these are people that just, they ponder things, and they're looking at the big picture, and they're like, something's not right. I think there's more. This could be better. I don't think our customers are as happy as they could be, or I don't think our family is living up to its potential, or I don't think our employees are really, I don't think there's something here that I just know is not right. And I've been sitting in it and thinking about it and pondering it and angsting over it. I don't know what the answer is, but I know there's something here that needs to be addressed. And the people that do this really well certainly don't think that they have genius. And other people sometimes think, why are you so worried about that? And it's like, that's a genius we need to tap into, because they're the ones that see the canary in the coal mine coughing and go, "Hey, everybody, I'm really worried about it." And other people are like, "You worry too much." It's like, no. They have a gift. They see issues or potential or opportunity or potential challenges long before everybody else. And that's the beginning of innovation. And so Amy in our company has this, and my wife has it. And I've never really understood it as the talent or the genius that it is. And now when we turn to them and say, "We need your W, we need your wonder. What is your biggest picture mind seeing out there?" Now, that's just the first one. They need, and that's how these are all interconnected, they need the second genius, which is one of my favorite. This is one of mine, and that's the genius of invention. Somebody that looks at that and says, "Oh, that is a problem. Boy, that's great that you identified it. I want to come up with a solution. I want to invent something, create something novel and new." My favorite thing in the world, Ryan, is when people come to me and say, "We don't know how to solve this problem," or "There's a need in the world, but how would you do that?" And I'm like, "Ooh, good. Don't say anything more. I want to come up with something out of nothing." It's like, I love creating new stories, new models. Mm-hmm. When people say, I remember years ago, Ryan, people said meetings are boring. And I thought, I want to figure out how to make them better. And I would sit in my clients' boring meetings, and I would look around and go, okay, I think I'm figuring something out here. And the genius of invention isn't just about technology or inventing an airplane or something. It's about a new way of thinking about things. Heck, a fantastic vacation for your family. Like, I like coming up with something out of nothing. Invention is in my DNA. And unfortunately, people think inventors are the superstars in society. They're not. They're not. You need all of these, because the next type of genius, and this is one that you and I share, is what we call the genius of discernment. And this is critical. And this is what prompted this whole model, is because nobody really describes this well. People that have the genius of discernment are the ones that look at somebody else's idea or look at a concept or a plan, and they have this innate natural ability to tap into their intuition and their instincts, even without data, maybe especially without data, and just go, that's a great idea. Or no, that's not going to work. They just have this emotional intelligence and instinct to look at something and say, wow, you're onto something there. And they're the ones that provide the inventor with insight and vetting and questions. And they actually take the innovation and make sure it can work, or can make sure that it's a good idea, or that they kill a bad idea. The genius of discernment is huge in our personal lives and in our work. And without it, you can't innovate, because nobody's giving you the right feedback or assessment of whether it's a good idea. So that's the third. You start with the genius of wonder, something's not right. Then you go to the genius of invention. I have an idea. Then you go to the genius of discernment and go, whoa, let me ask you some questions. I think I can figure this out. And then the person with the genius of discernment needs the next genius, which I don't have, and which I've been doing for 20 years, and it's been crushing me. And that's what brought this about. And that is the genius of galvanizing. Galvanizing is that person that goes, so you think that's a great idea? I'm going to get everybody signed up. I'm going to go out and get everybody in a room and get them motivated and organized and moving forward. I'm going to inspire them. I'm going to recruit them. I'm going to galvanize them so that we actually do something with this. Now, it is an area of competence for me, but it doesn't come naturally, and it exhausts me.
Really?
And every day I was coming to work.
Surprises me a bit.
It surprises you because I do it all the time.
Yes.
And that's the thing. Everybody at work thought, well, you do this for us, because I was the one that did it at work for years, but they didn't know that it wasn't giving me joy. And in fact, it was frustrating me over time, because I was doing that instead of tapping into my natural genius. And so you know what I did? I found 2 people in my organization. In fact, I found one that had it, and I said, I'm going to make you the galvanizer. And we hired a guy that we knew and said, you're a galvanizer. You're going to come in and do more of that so that I can actually live in my genius, which is more invention and discernment.
Can we pause for a second here, Pat?
Please.
Okay. When you say I find a guy, or I found someone who has this type of genius that I really want because it's lacking on my team, or I don't have it as the leader of the team, that as a leader and someone who's been in positions to hire, and I help people who are hiring others, this is a critical point. How does one, maybe it's as simple as they take your assessment, I'm not sure, but how does one know, okay, I need a galvanizer? What are some of the things you ask in an interview? What do you search for when you're out there looking around? Like, how do you find a specific type of working genius when you're recruiting?
Well, and that's the thing about this model. It is so much more behavioral. I mean, and I love the Myers-Briggs and DISC and all those other things, but it's kind of like, so are we supposed to hire an ENFJ? Well, not necessarily, but these things are your working genius. They are specifically practically applied to getting things done. So in the assessment and in the model, here's a way to do this. We wrote this. Here's what a galvanizer tends to think and say. They say things like, come on, everyone, this is a huge opportunity, or let's figure out how to get this going, or I need you to join the team, or does anyone here understand why we need to do this? Now, and here's what other people say about galvanizers. He's got so much energy and passion for what we're doing, or she can't hide her excitement, or be careful, it's hard to resist his call to action, or you can always count on her to get things going. You read those and you go, oh, that's Chris. And you go, hey, Chris, this is you, right? And he's like, oh, yeah, I can't help it. And we're like, okay, good. Because I actually don't like doing that. I can force myself to, but let's make that. Hey, get this, Ryan. We hired a 22-year-old kid, one of my son's best friends from college. We hired these 2 new college grads. He's 22. We put him on a team. We realize he takes the test. He's a galvanizer. And we're like, hey, you 22-year-old, the people on your team that are 30 and 40 and 50, they're not galvanizers. So we want you to keep them in line. And he's like, what? And they're like, yeah, keep us in line. I don't care if you're 30 years younger than me, dude. You have this natural gift. It's your job. And just this morning, he was galvanizing a bunch of people older than him, not because he's got experience or expertise, but he has this natural gift. And he's like, I love doing that. So it allows you to use the people around you better because you go, I didn't know you had that gift. I shouldn't do this just because I'm the boss. I'm the boss, but I have a few natural talents and I don't have these others. I'm going to let you do this for me. And suddenly everybody's using their gifts and they're coming to work feeling like, I'm doing what I'm meant to do. So.
Final 2. Let's get to the final 2.
Yes. So the galvanizer is galvanized. Yep. Come on, everybody. And then it comes to the next genius, which we call the genius of enablement. And people that have this, it's totally a genius, but they don't think it is. These are the people that are very quick to say, I'll help you. Okay, I'll come alongside. Let me know. What do you need from me? I'm enlisting. I'm willing to join. People think that that's not a gift. They're like, I'm just nice, or I'm just easily convinced. No, it's absolutely a genius. They're the kind of people that say, listen, I don't need to do it on my terms. I'm going to make myself available because I know you have a dream. I know you've rallied me to do this, and I'm willing to come alongside and do whatever's necessary to help you. It is absolutely a genius. My wife has this and I don't, and I see it now. I look at my wife at home and I go, that genius of yours serves our family so well, and she has never recognized it as a genius. She thought, well, I'm just a mom. And it's like, there are moms that don't do this naturally. And so they have to force themselves to, and they get exhausted. But when I say to my wife, I'll call her and I'll say, hey, 5 guys or friends are out of town, or 2 families, and can they come over tonight for dinner? My wife will say, absolutely. Because the thought that she's making their life better and that she can comfort them and support them, and she'll round up a feast on a moment's notice. She did it one day, and I said, Laura, you did it too much. And she said, but this is what I do. I love helping other people on their terms because that's the gift I have. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to criticize her or discourage her from doing that because this is her God-given talent. And when people realize, oh my gosh, this is a gift, other people don't have it, suddenly they're not feeling like, oh, I just do whatever people want. They're like, I'm an enabler. And by the way, that word enabler, we tend to think of it like, well, you enable an alcoholic or a drug addict. No. 95% of the time, when you're enabling something good, it's one of the greatest gifts we have.
Can I bring up a potential counter to this? Because please. I think playing the role of devil's advocate is part of what I try to do. So
absolutely.
So I think my wife shares this talent, this level of working genius, similar to your wife, Laura. Miranda, the one potential criticism that comes from someone who is always there to help, and is skilled and really good at it. So whatever it may be, at times that person, especially if they struggle to say no, can have 935,000 things on their plate, and it can get in the way of them doing whatever their job is. And my wife Miranda is this has happened from time to time where she'll get asked to do something work-wise or creatively or whatever it may be, and she's like, yes. And then
they overcommit.
They're overcommitted because they love the feeling of helping. They're good at it. They want to do it. But then the problem is they have way too much on their plate, and then that could potentially lead to problems. What about for that part of
I love this question, because now my wife says, remember before I said I have the genius of discernment?
Mm-hmm.
She now says, I need your D. Can you help me? I know that my 22-year-old sons laugh at that. They think it sounds nasty. And I'm like, hey, you guys, it means something. But she says, I need you to discern for me whether or not, because I know I do this. Hey, in our office, Amy, who's our general manager, she has a high D and E.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll go to her sometimes and I'll say, hey, I have this idea. And she'll go, okay, I'm going to help you. And I go, no. I don't want your E right now. I want your discernment.
Yeah.
And so we have this language now. Just because my wife is an enabler doesn't mean that every situation calls for her to use that.
Yeah.
And just because someone's a galvanizer doesn't mean they should galvanize every idea. What they need to do is turn to somebody and say, hey, I'm lacking in this area. My son, who works for me now, he came to me yesterday and said, Dad, I need your eye. And I was like, oh, good. I love to eye. But sometimes we're in a meeting and we're executing on something. I'm like, hey, I have an idea. And they're like, we don't want your eye right now. We're done with invention. We need some enablement. So it allows us to apply our geniuses in the right moment, because nobody should just be using just their genius in every situation. Sometimes it's inappropriate.
Yeah. Okay. And the final one.
The final one is the genius of tenacity, because the enabler, as you said, as we talked about, they love to help people, but they don't necessarily love to finish things, because they're really responding to the human needs of another person. The person who has the genius of tenacity, they're motivated by getting things done, by finishing, by seeing the impact of the work. And they're going to be the ones that say, hey, I realize this is no longer novel or interesting, and we're ready to move on to something else, but it's not done. And if it's not done, it's not going to have the impact we need. I like to complete things and cross them off the list and know that we've done it well. And so now we realize we have people in our office that have the genius of enablement. They'll support anything. But once they don't see the human need there, they'll move on to something else. We need somebody with the T, the genius of tenacity, and that's one of yours.
Yes. So I want to transition to our assessments.
Yes.
And we'll start with mine, which you've introduced my two areas, which are discernment and tenacity. And tell me how that plays and the advantages of having those as be my two working types of genius.
So, and this totally makes sense given what you do. You're a curator of information.
Mm-hmm.
We almost called it the genius of curation, but there's more than that. But curation is you look at all the stuff going on in the world and you make sense of it. Mm-hmm. And you don't do it through a spreadsheet or data. You go, where does this fit and how does this go together and what's interesting and what's needs to be discussed? I mean, you do this every time you do a podcast or you write. You're using discernment to decide what's interesting, what's important, what do people need to hear, how much of it do they need? It's a real gift that a super linear thinker struggles with sometimes. And so you have this interpretive way of integrating things, and that's what you do, which makes sense. And that's why people listen to your podcast. And I love to talk to you because you're looking at the world and you're saying, hey, what about this? What about this? This is interesting. This might be useful. And people trust your discernment, right? If I talked to you and you said, hey, I saw this movie, Pat, I think you're going to love it, I would really trust that because you get me and you get movies, you get culture. So that's what you do. But then the discernment, you also have the genius of tenacity, which means you like to get stuff done. The world is full of people that go, I'd love to do a podcast. I have a lot of good ideas, but and they might try it and the first day it didn't go so well, and you're like, no, I'm going to keep doing it because I like finishing. I like proving that it can be done. I like seeing the impact, and I'm not going to stop. You know, I was a screenwriter before I did my current thing for fun after college, and everybody said, and I wrote like a number of screenplays in Hollywood. I got some of them read and everything else. And people said, you know, everybody's writing a screenplay. And I was like, yeah, but very few people finish them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're a finisher. I'm not. I had to force myself to do that. And I have people around me who are finishers who say, well, like when I write a book, Ryan, at the end of the book, the ending is always bad. Because I'm like, okay, and then they died. And then people are like, no, we're going to make you finish. And so my editor is like, no, I need a better ending. And I'm not letting you stop until you give me one.
Interesting. So do you believe these are just innate talents, or is it something that we can work to develop? Because let's say somebody's listening and they're hearing the 6 and are like, I want to be tenacious. I don't know if I am. I have a track record of not finishing, but I want that. So how do you view that?
I think it's innate.
Okay.
And we have to learn to do things well that we don't like, but we can't put ourselves in a position to make our success and our happiness in life predicated on that. So I grew up in a family. My dad was a T. He was a finisher, and he valued that. Yeah. And I wanted my dad's approval. And let me tell you something. I had a 4.0 in high school. I had no business having a 4.0, but I did it because I wanted to prove to my dad that I could. I never missed a class in college. I cleaned my room. I had a little bit of OCD. There was all kinds of things that went into me looking like a T. When I finally got into the world and I said, no, but this isn't making me happy. And I realized that was unnatural. And when I got my first job out of college and all they wanted me to do was T things, and I hated it because I realized, am I going to do this for the rest of my life? And so, yes, we can overcome it. And for a short period of time or in a given situation or in our first job, maybe we want to be successful, but there's no goodness in life swimming against your natural grain. And that natural grain, I'm sure was God-given, and I was born. When I was a little kid, I was doing the things I love to do now.
What about people who are hiring for leadership positions? So a senior leader is hiring managers to run a team or run teams. Are there specific types of working genius that they should look for, or it's not about that? It's about just being aware of what it is and then pouring into that? Because I think that the shorter version of that question is, do certain types of working genius make better leaders?
And the answer is no. Mm-hmm. And you hit the nail on the head, as I would expect you to, and that is, it's awareness and tapping into people's strengths. And what I really would say is, it gets back to humble, hungry, and smart, the ideal team player. And a leader should be humble, realize that the people that work for me are more important than I am, and I'm serving them. They're hungry. I really want us to accomplish a lot. And smart, I get people. Now, but if I'm, like in my case, I needed to surround myself with more G's because I was burning myself out because I was galvanizing all the time. Having said that, there are certain types that, like, if you're managing a lot of projects, and your job is to make sure that you're getting people to do things that they wouldn't normally do, I might look at it and say, hey, I'm looking for a GT in that one. But then again, if I'm hiring a creative leader, and we're working with a CEO right now who's a wanderer inventor. So he likes to look at the world. What's wrong? Oh, I came up with an idea. The ideas aren't always right. He doesn't love to rally people around them. He just loves to invent them. And he realized why his company is struggling. This is a big, famous company. He's like, oh my gosh, I don't like to discern or galvanize. So he thinks it goes from he was thinking it goes from invention to tenacity, and it never does.
I think one of the things, Pat, one of the mistakes I made as a newer manager, but you could still make this if you're not aware enough of it, even if you're experienced, is I was attracted to people like me. I got promoted from being a good sales rep, and I just wanted to hire 15 people exactly like me.
Sure.
And I didn't realize how stupid that is initially. It took some time and some mistakes and failure in order to get better at realizing the value of surrounding myself with people who are different. How does one go about understanding that aspect of, okay, I'm a discernment guy, and because for me, I really value what I'm good at. I mean, surprise, surprise, we probably all do. Like, I want a tenacious person. I want someone who's going to get stuff done, because I obviously value that. I try my best to do that constantly. So if I see someone who doesn't have that, it could potentially be a turnoff, which could be a problem as a leader, because I need to surround myself to have a better, more well-rounded team. For that person who's kind of going through this in their mind, what advice do you have for them?
Well, what I would say is this. And I totally understand where you're coming from. Part of it is to realize tenacity is one of those things that we tend to look at a person and say it's a virtue. Like, you're disciplined and you're hardworking and you're dependable. And certainly everybody should be disciplined, hardworking, and dependable, but not everybody has the natural gift of that. And so for you, and this is one of the most powerful parts of this model, is it allows us not to judge, because you might very well need somebody who's got the gift of wonder and enablement to partner with you, but they don't necessarily finish things. And you might be able to look at them and go, oh, wow, they have genius. They're just not naturally gifted at that. And they know it. They're humble enough to admit it. And so rather than me saying they're flaky, which it's so tempting to do that, you go, oh no, they need somebody next to them kind of cracking the whip a little bit and saying, hey, let's keep going. And the difference between looking at them as having a fault that is frustrating, or them not having an area of genius that needs to be supported or helped, is very different. And so what I would say is you probably need people that don't have the same genius as you do to fill in the gaps. Now, but if they're not humble, hungry, or smart, then that's beyond their genius. That's just, they're not that humble, hungry, or smart. So one of the biggest, and this is the important point, Ryan, I don't think I was very articulate there. We will allow ourselves not to judge others because of their genius once we know what their geniuses are. We will also allow ourselves not to judge ourselves and feel guilty. Because can you imagine, for years I felt like a total sloth for not loving tenacity, but I powered myself to do it. And I actually talked myself into a job and put myself in a career and kept saying, why don't I like to do this? And finally I was like, oh, that's just not me. I thought tenacity and enablement were virtues. They're actually gifts. Now, does that mean when my wife asks me to help her with something, I can say, honey, I'm not an enabler? I'm like, no, suck it up, dude, and help her. But just know, I don't love when she says we have to clean the garage this weekend. I don't go, yeah, tell me what you need to do. Because I'll go, hey, you could hire somebody to do that.
Pat, in the world that we work in, people, because some deem this stuff soft skills, right? Oh, and so
anything but.
Exactly, right? They should be renamed essential skills, but still, it at times can be. We want tangible results. We want to make transformations, and I sense that your excitement and your team's excitement about this is because you firmly believe it will have transformative impacts on leaders and teams and businesses as a whole. You've just started kind of putting this into play. What are some of the early pieces of feedback? You mentioned the one CEO who's crying and others. What are some of the early pieces of feedback you're getting as you are taking it from a theory and putting it into practice?
Well, that's what's so fun, getting reports back. And at first we started with people we knew, and we were like, let's see if this is accurate. And it was like, holy Toledo. People that I hadn't seen in years, they would go, hey, this guy just sent it. What do you think he is? And I'd be like, I think he's this, and that. They're like, that's true. Now we're in the place where we're looking at people's reactions, and they're like, I didn't realize. This makes total sense to me, and I understand now why I failed in that job, or why my team was successful, or how we need to reorient our team. So the light bulbs go on. But I want to go back to something, because we were talking about the Ohio football teams and Joe Burrow. Yes. Imagine two quarterbacks who have different kinds of working genius. Imagine like I'm guessing that Peyton Manning was probably a pretty good a discerner. Like, he would go to the line of scrimmage and just look at things and go, I see a pattern here. I think I know what these people are going to do. I'm going to audible on this play because I know this pattern. It's not a linear thing like if the guy's standing right there. It's more like, game situation, where's everybody at? Okay, I'm going to call this play, and I think I'm going to get them. That's a totally different kind of quarterback to one that's just an enablement tenacity quarterback who's like, I'm going to do whatever the coaches say, and I'm going to work out harder, and I'm going to be disciplined You don't send that guy to the line of scrimmage to audibilize as much. You have a great offensive coordinator who's teaching him what to do. And this guy is like, you're a joystick, and he's like the best avatar on the field, right? Then there's an inventive one that's like, I need to be in the room with the offensive coordinator designing the plays.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at head coaches in the NFL. I mean, like, we have this guy Shanahan who's in San Francisco, who's a great inventor, but I really don't think he's good in the crunch at calling the plays. I don't think he's a great discerner. He designs these world-class offenses that are amazing, but I think he needs somebody calling the plays on the field. Everything we do in life, we need to be doing it in a way that speaks to our geniuses and bringing people in to fill in the gaps where we don't have it.
It sounds like one of the skills we need is how to be collaborative with a group, to have people, like you said, fill in. So maybe a guy like Shanahan, who, you're right, and I've talked to NFL quarterbacks who talk about his prowess as a play designer, that he has a trusted advisor that's either calling the plays or at a minimum really helping him call the plays when it's the heat of the moment. You're looking at the clock, and there's crazy stuff happening when he's out of his zone of, or his type of working genius. It feels like that's what you're saying.
Absolutely. Norv Turner is a friend of mine. He was a coach for years. And when he was with the Cowboys, Jimmy Johnson was the head coach. Norv Turner was the offensive coordinator. And was it Dave Wannstedt was the defensive coordinator, I think?
He was a defensive guy at one point, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was their defensive coordinator when they won all their Super Bowls. But Jimmy Johnson was the CEO of the team.
Right.
He completely turned over the design and play calling to Norv.
Mm-hmm.
Now, then there's these coaches in the league today that are married to the play calling sheet, and essentially what they are is head coaches, but they're really offensive coordinators.
Right.
And the thing is, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to be a CEO. There's more than one way to be a principal of a school or a pastor of a church. And there's more than one way to be a head coach. But if you don't know what your genius is, and you don't find people that are geniuses in areas that you're not, it's not going to be a collaborative effort. And you said it. That's why we call it working genius. It's discover your gifts so that you can fit onto a team and get things done.
Do you intend to work a lot with sports? I mean, obviously the intersection of leadership and sports is like perfect for me. It's what I love the most. And remember, Spoelstra wrote us, the coach of the Heat, who knows by the time this comes out.
A friend of mine too.
Yeah, he may be winning a championship, but
wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah, I mean, his team's so fun to watch. Do you intend to really hopefully have this be a part of your businesses to continue working with sports teams to help them with their types of working genius?
We think this has application in every field.
Yeah.
We think teachers need to figure out, my son's girlfriend is becoming a teacher. And when I did this with her, she wants to teach third grade, and she's a DE, which means she's a discerner, which means she can look at the kids and go, what does this kid need to learn versus this kid? She's not like a cookie cutter, but she's an E. She loves to respond to their needs. And she was like, this is the perfect job for me. And before that, she was like, should I be a school teacher? Why am I going into this? And I'm like, no, this is, not only should you be a school teacher, but you should teach younger kids that you need to figure out how they learn, and you need to provide that love and responsiveness to them. And she's like, yes, this is the career I want. Whereas a college professor might not want to be that way, or a researcher, because education to them might be more about invention, or it might be more about, So anyway,
yeah,
I think this applies to sports and teams. I think it applies to education. I think it applies to family. My wife and I, there's only two, until they've approved polygamy, which is probably coming soon. But there's only two of us, so we only have two spouses covering four geniuses. And two of our geniuses are similar. So we have two areas of complete blindness in our family. And we looked back at our marriage and said, oh, every argument we had, every stress we had was because we have no T. We have no tenacity. And we'd be like, I thought you were going to do that. Oh, I thought you were going to do that.
I think that may be more common.
Well, and Laura always says, we need one more spouse in the family who has G and T.
I don't know.
No, I'm not advocating polygamy.
I'm with you.
I live in California, so it's just days away, I think.
This is let's get into the process for a second. This is backwards, or at least it feels to me, because normally I see the book and then everything else is after. Now the concepts, the ideas, they're out there before the book. And so a couple questions. One, interesting, and I'm curious as to what it was about this that made it be reversed. And two, will you write it as a fable?
I am writing it as a fable.
Okay.
And we did it reverse because we wanted to get the model out there. Honestly, the idea that people were in jobs where they didn't have their genius and that they were suffering, I thought, I'm not going to wait for a book to come out. It'll be a year and a half before this takes effect. We think people can do this quickly and do it right away. And in fact, like I want people that hear this to go, and there's a discount, right? We're going to do a 50% discount for your listeners.
Yeah.
And I want them to go take this, take 10 minutes to take it, another 10 minutes or 15 minutes to read through the report and really learn it and think about how to apply it. And then I want them to go talk to their spouse, their friends, their coworkers, their brothers and sisters, because they're going to look back at life and they're going to go, oh my gosh, no wonder I did this, you know? And we want people to just start using it and applying it. In a half hour, a person can take this, go through the results, and start to implement from the insights that they have.
It's workinggenius.com, and the code is HAWK, HAWK, for 50% off. Cody gave that to me, Pat, earlier. And so I went and took it to prepare for this, and I actually enjoyed taking the assessment. Good. And I got the large PDF back, and I was just reading through it during my prep, and it is helpful to understand, and it makes so much sense, especially, and I'm having Miranda actually take the test. I have an idea.
Oh, I can't wait to hear what your wife is.
But I'm going to have because I think this is partially, because sometimes, people say, like, why does your relationship work? And you can list some things, but I think part of it is because we are a good match in the fact that we have different types of working genius. Similar to you and Laura, I think that there may be a little bit of overlap, but we have different things where we're innately born to do, that we like doing, that we're good at doing. And because of those kind of the complementary parts and aspects to us, it seems to make it work better than if it wasn't that way.
Yeah, that's not why you have a good marriage. You have a good marriage because you're committed to one another and sacrifice and put the other person first.
Yes.
But if you have complementarity in your working geniuses and you appreciate your differences, and you're aware of where you have blind spots and you work together to fill those in, that can make it just so much less friction oriented.
Yeah. So true.
And even though my wife and I have known each other we've been married for 28 years, until we did this, we didn't realize, oh my gosh, that comes up all the time. And now my wife will say, I know you're not a galvanizer, but I need you to galvanize this. And then I can kind of put on my armor and go, okay, I can do this, as opposed to if every day she comes and says, galvanize the family. Because now I'll say to her, I need you to galvanize the kids around their homework tonight. I'm just beat. And she's like, oh, okay, I know what you mean.
Love it. Well, I would encourage everyone to do this. Workinggenius.com. Use the code HAWK, 50% off. Get the assessment and then email me. You can email me, Ryan@learningleader.com, and I want to hear about it because I'm excited for this, how it impacts teams. Pat, how you and I can work together and help people as they do this. I'm certainly committed to that. I have already, Cody and I had a long, good talk about that. So I'm into this in a big way. I wouldn't have done this episode if I wasn't, Pat, because I would have waited till your book came out. But I'm really into this, and I'm excited that you're getting this out there to help so many people.
Very good. I am, this is the most exciting thing I think we've ever done. We've been in business for 23, almost 24 years. And that CEO who did it and cried said, Pat, I think this is going to be bigger than the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
That's so cool. Can you do 1 minute or 2 minutes on Joe Burrow, why he's the ideal team player? I'm in Southwest Ohio. I love Joe Burrow. He's an Ohio guy. He grew up in Athens, which is where I went to college, Athens, Ohio. Come on, give me a little bit of ideal team player with him.
Well, the key is humility is a paradox, right? You have to, but it's not about lacking confidence.
He's got swag. He's
got
confident.
swag, but it's not about him. It's about what he can do. And he
Yes.
doesn't seem to take himself that seriously.
He rated
And
himself
as a result, that
after his first game when he played great, second game played even better. I mean, yeah.
look back at Johnny Manziel,
Yeah.
and poor guy. But so another guy with a Heisman Trophy winner coming out of college, but he had confidence, but it was cockiness,
Right.
and there wasn't humility.
Right.
And that's the thing about Burrow. You can tell he wants to win. He's not about his persona, but he feels like he knows he's good at what he does. And, it was so interesting watching him play. And I'm really enjoying him. I'm rooting for him because he doesn't seem like it's about him.
And I think as the quarterback too, you have to have a bit of the moxie and the swagger to get because you're the emotional thermostat for the team, as leaders are on most teams. And so they look to him even as a young guy, and it's so great to see the composure. And certainly he's making plays, which in the NFL, you got it. You just got to make the throws, make the plays, convert third and fourth downs. And I think that's what's exciting to me, because you do still sense this humble, hungry, smart type of a person. And I'm excited. I hope they can surround him with some guys to protect him, but I'm excited to see the future of him here in Cincinnati.
Yeah, offensive line. They should just keep drafting and trading for offensive linemen.
Yes. Anyway, Pat, I could talk all your stuff all day. Thank you so much again, man. Again, it's workinggenius.com, code HAWK for 50% off. Anything else I missed or you want to hit before we go?
No, just get back to me about what your wife's type is, what her
I'm going to. I'll have her take it. I'll have her take it, and then we'll make this happen. Thanks so much, man. I always love catching up. Let's look forward to the next one already.
Alrighty, Ryan.
All right.
God bless.
Thanks, Pat.
Buddy.